Well, for a deeper look at the Trump administration's Africa policy, let's bring in Abdullahi Boru Halakhe. He's an African security and policy analyst. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, being that we're a little bit light on details on how the Trump administration is really going to address Africa, how would you characterize their current policy in terms of investment on the continent?
I think one of the things that we need to slightly step back and look at, the manner and the context within which the current president or the current administration came into power. It was a visceral, inward-looking, economic nationalist, America first kind of, posture. And what that has done is that Donald Trump is appealing to his base, and he's looking at Americans as victims. So he wants to create jobs, economic development, trying to resuscitate some of the industries that probably have been passed by time. Secondly is he's been engaged in trade wars with China, with EU and NAFTA. So in that kind of an environment, what you have is an Africa that is more or less third, fourth, fifth order of business. However, this trip demonstrates that they cannot do that for a very long time. By 2050, Africa will be something close to 5.6 trillion market with a population of over 1.5 billion. And most of other players have already taken the role that United States has somewhat stepped back.
Right.
You have China that has got trade, volume close to over 100 billion. If you look at the United States, it's slightly under a quarter of that. So already United States is playing catch-up.
So let's take a look at that, because we know we have the EU, Japan, Russia, China, all really boosting their investment policies in Africa. How much of an impetus do you think that will be for the US administration to really step up?
To be really honest, for the United States, if you look at the former Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson's visit, you could see that United States, every visit, even John Kerry, former Secretary of State, all their visits, the soundtrack to all those visits are, China is taking everything. But however, if you look at the kind of investment China is making and the United States is making, the problem is not China, maybe the problem is lack of clarity by the United States. United States look at Africa as a solution that needs to be solved. China looks at Africa as a place where they can invest. Look at areas where United States are investing. United States is largely involved in security. Security sector reform, terrorism. But China, whereas that is an issue, they're investing in road, large-scale infrastructure projects, intercontinental railway, hydroelectric power. You can go and check some of the largest projects, large-scale infrastructure projects, are being supported by Chinese, and then EU, Japan, China in that order, United States.
So then, given that we have these very divergent strategies then, what are the expectations for Wilbur Ross's visit to Ghana?
I think the expectation wouldn't be that much. I mean, they will manage the expectation because, yes, it's very early in the administration, but if you look at, President Clinton, his signature achievement as far as Africa goes is AGOA, Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. If you look at President George Bush, he had PEPFAR that saved a lot of people during the AIDS crisis. If you look at the former President Obama, he had Power Africa. What does this administration bring? I mean, if you look at some of the organizations that are being represented on this trip, it's largely looking for business for American corporation rather than, what Africa is used to as bi or multilateral engagement with the United States.
And to that point, we saw that the president of the African Development Bank said that while the focus of the US is really to move from trade to aid, they're really falling behind a lot of countries when it comes to investment. Haven't really heard a lot about stepping up investment. He was saying that US exports to Africa have fallen, and African exports to the US have fallen even more sharply. So how likely is this downward trend to continue then?
Unless it's sustained, there are a couple of ways of looking at it. One is unless the United States steps up to the plate, which as of now, the Africa policy is not very coherent, let alone the economic and trade policy. Secondly, for Africa, this is a win-win situation. You've got all these folks who are interested in Africa. So it's a question of Africa recalibrating how it will want to engage with the world. No longer seen as, a place of hopelessness, war, and, famine. All those things are going in place, but Africa is not a mono story of only crisis. Africa is also a place for opportunities. So for African countries now, it's a question of double or multiple dripping for them to be able to get maximum opportunity. It's not like all the Chinese investment are just, are all, doing extremely well. There are questions around, environmental impact assessment. So for African countries, get investment from China for hardware, for software around tech, IT. The United States still has an edge. Be able to, to draw advantage from all this is how Africa, will push itself to the next level.
So very quickly, being that we have a very young, fast-growing continent, what is the best that the US can hope for in this relationship going forward?
It has to invest. I mean, you cannot look at people as a problem. Africa for a very long time has been seen as a problem that needs to be solved. That is, 20, 30, 40 years. Look at what the Ethiopian current president is doing. Prime Minister, sorry, he's going around. I mean, like, making relationship with Eritrea, coming to Kenya, coming to Dubai. He's just 41. And that is the future of Africa. If you look at some of, leaders in Africa, they are not 70, 80, 90. They are there, in places like Cameroon, places like Nigeria. But by and large, those people are being left by the youth. If you look at median age in most of the African countries, it's something like 17. Median, it's like 30. It's 26. And, this means that moving forward, this is where a lot of things need to happen. And these people will not just be sitting, idling by and waiting for people to come and save them.
Certainly a different shift in mindset. Thank you so much for your insights. Abdullahi Boru Halakhe there, African Security and Policy Analyst. Thank you so much.